Sometimes when I do chapter reviews, I'll sit for a minute and just kind of figure out like what exactly do I want to focus on when it comes to one of these reviews, because I don't want to just talk about, okay, this is how the chapter went. I'm done, upload. I want to always just give my input on what happened, because if I'm just giving the general summary of what it is, and it's not a review, it's more of just, again, a summary. But I like how this chapter went, but Mashima needs to be careful with Rebecca, and I mean that very strongly, because the difference between her and like Ellie and Lucy is the really big brokenness of Rebecca's power. We know already, and Ellie was broken, but Ellie wasn't really a fighter. Ellie was never really a character who would kind of get in the big brawl of things and put out a match. She had a degree of combat abilities, but it was very low skill because she, again, wasn't a fighting based character. Lucy's a little different because we see her just generally advance her magic throughout it, and then we've seen recently that it's some brokenness potentially in there, but we already know Rebecca's is really strong. And the kind of like base way she does it now is she's essentially using time manipulation to run really fast, but her whole thing with being able to turn back time and go between timelines is a very dangerous ability. But Mashima needs to be careful with it, because she has an ability that essentially, assuming that anytime she dies it'll reverse time, because there is a noted difference that what she did here and what she did against Nino is different than when she leaps between timelines. I'm guessing that it has to do with how far back she goes, than a couple seconds versus like days or hours, or even who knows exactly the details of it. But we do know that there is a difference between her just short range blinking back and then long distance traveling between timelines. But the fact that she has this ability, the fact that she has a way to essentially, assuming this how it works, never die unless her power is restrained, which again is one thing that is good that exists in Eden Zero. I'm hoping we get a better explanation of why just tying them up or restraining them stops their ether gears. I still believe it has to do with kind of like when you're tied up, the way that it restricts maybe like blood flow or something. It would restrict ether flow, or maybe that's only something that affects your ether gear at lower levels. Maybe if you go to overdrive it doesn't affect it, which again that would be perfectly fine with me if your power up form negates said weakness through a description of how the weakness works versus how this new form works, kind of thing. But Rebecca having essentially a means to never die is, it's something I worry about, just because it can easily make a scene with no tension, and it could definitely work like later. And like the chapter itself, I like seeing Rebecca be smart. I liked her having the momentarily kind of like pseudo point between overdrive and standard ether gear, because at least I would assume that, because her ether gear, she gets the cat ears, but I would assume since they're off her body, it's that same kind of general style of when you start to kind of slip further towards overdrive. It looks like it's just barely it, because her ether gear it's only on the legs, it hasn't spread that far out, but she has the cat ears. Maybe this is just the default form, but that she hasn't fully achieved yet. Either way, I like how she fought this. I like that she was trying to be smart while not having the most experience in combat. It's not like Homura, where Homura was constantly on her feet trying to figure this out, trying to like think what she was doing. Like if Rebecca really wanted to, she could run really fast up to Brittany, drop Pino could EMP, and she could defeat her there. But obviously, like I've mentioned before, that's always a strategy, but it would be putting Pino in some real danger. I don't think these characters for the most part would really do, unless it was a last resort kind of thing. I think if there was no other option, Pino would want to do that for obvious reasons of wanting to help her friends and stuff. But like the chapter, even at the beginning, like we have some nice moments with Homura right after beating Mora. Again, it's funny when you think about it, just like the unfortunate name combination when these two kind of fought. It's Homura and Mora, but while she's like collapsing because she's super low on power, Shiki carries her for a brief moment before he runs into a spider and Shiki collapses because we know Shiki's afraid of bugs, and she like holds on to like those tassel things on his coat and just kind of pulls him along. I thought that was pretty funny, and like her face when he falls down, she's just like, really, like, are you for real? I mean, I guess that it is Shiki's personality crippling weakness. I am curious to know if it's ever going to be like, if there's ever going to be a progression of it, because it's not the same as like a weakness like Dragon Slayers have motion sickness. Obviously 5th gen is different and 4th gen is weird, but that is a power difference, kind of like how, you know, tying up somebody can like prevent their ability to use either, whereas like this is a personal fear and personal weakness that Shiki could get over eventually. Maybe we'll meet somebody that has like a bug design and Shiki will kind of like learn to like bugs through friendship with them or something. But Rebecca in general, just at the start of the fight, she's using her ether gear now. She goes and kicks Brittany, and Brittany actually even comments on how she doesn't like how she's dumb. She's not doing essentially what Homura did. Homura covered Mora in dirt and debris, so the second he turned off his ether gear, she blitzed him and took him out, because that was the big problem with their fight. It wasn't speed, it wasn't power, it was that she didn't have a means to hurt somebody who could turn into an element, because elemental intangibility is a really good ability, just based off the fact that if your opponent only has plain physical attacks, even enhanced ones with like her Homura's ether sword, it doesn't really do anything. You have to have some way of either dealing with the specific elemental body that you're dealing with itself, or you have to have a power that kind of just says, who cares if you have an elemental body? Something like, actually a pretty easy comparison for Homura, but Merity in Fairy Tail. It's funny because like if you just look at the McGilty Scent swords, you'd kind of think that there's similar power. There's absolutely nothing similar between them, or even in their powers in general. But her power, when she hits somebody with one of her swords or her spells, she's directly attacking their senses. So she's directly going after their sense of pain in if you're actually chopping somebody. So you have something like that. You have a means of just saying, who cares about your intangibility? Like, you're just gonna go after anyway. But even in this, like, Brittany notes pretty much how Homura beat Mora is like how she's like, you're not even figuring this out, you're not even like trying to time like the ether gear switch. And that was nice. I like that we got a little bit of Brittany's personality in this. Like, she doesn't like girls that are dumb. I don't think Rebecca's dumb. I really don't. Homura, because if you compare them, you compare like girls that Mashima has intentionally made not as smart. You look at Ellie, Wraith Master. You look at Homura. As much as I like Homura, she definitely doesn't seem like the smartest. But if you look at somebody like Lucy was very smart. Rebecca, to me, just seems like standard intelligence. She doesn't seem too smart, but she doesn't seem dumb. She just seems like, when it comes to her intelligence, that she's just a regular girl. Because I think Mashima was definitely going for that when you have like the comparisons. Ellie was not smart. Ellie was very clearly not very bright, whereas Lucy was extremely intelligent, and she's the smartest person in the main cast. And Rebecca, I think I do like the idea of Rebecca just having like a standard sense of intelligence. And on top of that, when she doesn't know really what to do, also that's just an additional thing, because I didn't notice this until rereading, that she has after images with her powers, which again is something cool that she has. So you can add that to her arsenal. She can make a degree of an after image. But she's like, I don't really have any way of hitting you. I can't really deal with you, so I'm just gonna leave. She runs off. She's actually pretty again, fair smart, because she knows how to do something against the smoke. But it's not like I read it in a book, I did some research. I was like, no, one of the other girls that she knows on BQ, she essentially watched a YouTube video on it. She has a grasp on something in science that she saw on YouTube, which again is it's a very common thing now. Like, that's just one of those things. Like, I've met and talked to people, I'm sure everybody has, where they just know something that's like really hard to understand in science, but because one day they just decided to watch a bunch of videos on it. It's like, you are really knowledgeable on this one field of science. Like for a while I was looking super into entomology, so I like look at all this stuff about bugs, and so like somebody mentioned bugs, they'd be like, oh, you know, here's this thing or this thing, we can talk about this or this, like the fact, just like a small thing, like harvestmen aren't actually spiders. They look like spiders. They kind of look like daddy long legs, but they actually just have one large body, and they aren't poisonous. They kind of just like secrete like a smelly ooze and stuff. It's just one of those things. And I'm sure everybody listening probably has something in their brain that they learned just from watching some videos. And it's just like one of their personal fun science facts they learned, that like whenever they're bored, like they're in a conversation and they maybe this isn't going anywhere, they'll bring it out just to kind of like move the conversation somewhere. But she ends up going back to one of the towns where all the humans are enslaved by robots. I'm hoping that gets resolved by the end of this. They can fix the robots and maybe they can go back in a better place. Because it'll be really bad if they exit this planet while it's like this. Because these guys, as we have seen, like they're like the robots were feeding the humans dog food and beating them, so they wouldn't last. It's not like, oh, we'll come back in 6 months and save you. It's like, no, they'll be dead. They'll all be dead by then. But while they're just kind of talking, Rebecca ends up going to like a store and then gets like a vacuum, like this vacuum, and it's locked to a person, which is, again, it's weird, but it makes sense, I guess, in some super high-tech feature series. But she's not able to get it in time. Pino does get the code, but Rebecca's not able to activate the vacuum, and this is a corrosive gas that melts skin. And you get like this moment of Rebecca where she's essentially just this bald, black and bloodied person, where her ether gear activates and it pulls her back to right before she went inside of the vacuum store. And again, if it's a short term, that's fine. What I would like to happen though, if Mashima continues like having moments like this, he has to have a character figure it out. And instead of like, if you had characters who knew, don't kill her, do not kill her, go after her, subdue her. It'd be like, and it's kind of like, you know, you have Black Clover, like Vanessa, like because of her magic, she's a very high level support. Rebecca has that, but it's like, it's mostly, for the most part, like how it's seen here, it's gonna work on her, but obviously it could work on other people, because if she reverse time back a couple moments, she would know stuff like, hey, you know, they're gonna attack you from this angle, or use this attack instead, kind of thing. It's definitely a really useful thing, but Mashima needs to be careful with it. I trust him, though, more than I would most mangaka when it comes to time travel, because most writers, and I'm sure a lot of people have seen this, when they dip into time travel, it can very easily become a problem. You have to have a writer that is more adept to time travel, so it doesn't become like a mess where you have like inconsistencies and plot holes and problems of like, why don't they just time travel and fix this, or why do they time travel and fix every problem? But Mashima, if you, like anybody who hasn't checked out his other series and only checked out Ether Gear, time travel stuff is something he has in all of his series. It's all done differently, but he always has it. Rave Master had time travel, Fairy Tail had time travel. It's something that he utilizes in all of his series. That's why I say time shenanigans. Mashima loves time shenanigans. So I trust him for now on this ability for Rebecca, because I know that he has enough experience with time related abilities that he probably knows I can't just let her free, undo any death, and essentially set up a way she could never lose. Or if a character, like if you have a character who just intelligently, it's like, I know how that power works, I'm not gonna kill you. Like, because if Brittany just knocked her out and then captured her, this wouldn't happen, but she tried to kill her because she doesn't know how her power works. Whereas if you have that in a different scenario, it could come out, and it, like, even if somebody has a, I'm stuttering over this real bad, even if somebody doesn't have the means to take Rebecca's ability down because of how broken it is, they could subdue her and defeat her that way. So that, again, that would be a really smart way for Mashima to kind of just easily progress this, because characters definitely need to be smart enough to know about this eventually. Like, this is a different scenario versus like Drac and Joe, where Drac and Joe knew about it, whereas like the guys in Nero's empire are now facing these guys like kind of blindly. They're just like running into them, and they're in a way, the Eden Zero main cast is, you know, is coming, they're in a way infiltrating and invading his empire in a sense, because he does own this place. He's drawing hostility towards them, but he could see that almost like an invasion. Plus, they're related to Ziggy, and Ziggy's is definitely a hostile like invasion. He's going around converting planets with his virus into being like these evil robots. So him, I can definitely see why Nero would go after them. But I'm hoping that maybe after this, or maybe after another wave of enemies, somebody, either Nero or somebody in his little legion, says, hey, we need to do something about this power. This is a weird power. Do not kill her, subdue her, because that's all you really need to do currently to stop Rebecca's ability, because it has really high broken potential later, but for now it still has like a really good auto save. And I'd be curious to know like what like the limits of it are, because could it be like Vanessa's again. Vanessa in Black Clover, if you don't read Black Clover, she has this red string of fate cat summon like ability, and she can undo moments that happen. Like if somebody in her team dies, she can undo it to where, you know, the attack misses or she saves them, but she can't do that infinitely. Like it costs magic for her to do it. Like it costs some of her mana to do it each time. So essentially, unless you had some way like Charmy or some way of just replenishing her mana, you could just run her a number of saves out dry. And I'm wondering if maybe we'd have that with Rebecca. Like if Rebecca was against somebody who no matter what she couldn't beat, would she eventually run out of ether and then she couldn't just use her ability anymore and she would lose? There are definite ways that this can get balanced, and that is why I do trust Mashima in this matter. If it was another mangaka without, you know, experience and time travel stuff, I would be worried, just because it is a dangerous power from a writing standpoint, not just from a power standpoint. So other than that, they'll comment below. I like this chapter again. I thought that like Homura and Rebecca really kind of figuring out their opponents was really nice. These guys weren't big deal opponents. They were not like, they weren't even mid boss. These were opening antagonists. And again, as much as I like Mora's design, him going down again, I'm perfectly fine with, because I have to look at it from a story standpoint, not from my personal opinion standpoint. He was the first of Nero's men to come up and fight them. So the only way they were going to have any relevance is if they were lucky and they were like the three members of Diablos from 100 Years Quest, where it's like you're seeing them first because they're the primary ones that are just going to be the most active. You could get lucky with that, or you could get unlucky with these guys and more than likely be first bad guys that get defeated, and then we probably never see them again, outside of maybe like they come back and then the main cast runs through them way easier because they know all their gimmicks and stuff. But other than that, though, comment below. Tell me your thoughts about this chapter. I liked it. I really liked the as you can see here, the ether cat ears on Rebecca, just because it shows a level of progress with her abilities. So that is a big thumbs up as well. Any of my not negative but kind of more ominous and foreboding opinions are more of potentially bad, not what is bad. But again, I do trust Mashima. I'm sure he's already figured this out and he has a plan for it. So other than that, they'll comment below, thumbs up the video, befriend the like button, subscribe button, and check out my other videos. But other than that, I appreciate everybody's hard subscribe. Thank you all for listening. Bye.